Dr. Betsy McCoy has been popping up on Fox News a lot lately, talking about how the Affordable Care Act, a.k.a. Obamacare, is going to eviscerate Medicare. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Dr. McCoy is a conservative commentator, author of Beating Obamacare, Your Handbook for Surviving the New Healthcare Law, former lieutenant governor of New York State. Her website, Betsy McCoy, it's spelled McCaughy.com. Also, a former member of the board of directors of Cantel Medical, and there's some other company in here. Anyway, Betsy, welcome to the program.
Thank you. You forgot my blood type.
Well, here's my question. You make this compelling argument that you used to make a compelling argument that there were death panels in Obamacare. I haven't heard that in a while, but now you're running around saying, "Look out, seniors, beware! This is going to take all this money away from Medicare," and I'm wondering why. Well, not why you're saying this. But why would anybody who has to answer to the people every 2 years in an election, why would they write a piece of legislation that's going to rip the guts out of Medicare, a program conservatives have always loved to hate, but nonetheless, a program that's very popular? Why would they do that?
There's no question that that's what's being done. If you look at the government's own projections, the reports from the Congressional Budget Office,
I've got your understanding, your interpretation of that. I acknowledge that is your position on that. I'm wondering why you think the people who put together the Affordable Care Act did this incredibly malicious thing against people over 65. Why would they do that?
Because they didn't believe that that people would understand why health care, especially for seniors, was deteriorating so rapidly. What the law does is, it's right here on my desk, great big law, over half of it is paid for with cuts to Medicare. They took $716 billion out of Medicare and moved it over to fund a very big expansion, a vast expansion of Medicaid. It's like robbing grandma.
No, as I said, I've heard you say that, and I could debate it with you if you want. I mean, it actually reduces future Medicare spending by $500 billion, lowers the growth rate of payments by $219 billion, if you want to get specific about it. So it's actually $719 billion.
Old numbers.
But, okay, well, whatever numbers. Let's just assume that what you're saying is absolutely true. I asked the question, why would these largely Democratic legislators, although there were Republicans who helped put this thing together in the Senate in particular, why would they do something that is so terrible to old people? And the answer that you just gave me was because they thought that old people wouldn't realize that it was happening.
Right. They thought it was easy money if you raise taxes.
So why would they do something why would they feel the need to do something on the assumption that people wouldn't realize that they were doing it?
Easier politically than raising taxes more. What this law does is it raised taxes about $500 billion over the course of the decade, and it takes, as I said, $716 billion out of Medicare.
But Betsy, an overwhelming majority of the American people, well over 50% of the American people, in any study you ask, are in favor of raising taxes on rich people and corporations in America.
Well, but it's not just rich people. You can't get enough money out of rich people.
You certainly could.
Well, no. Let me just explain. Last January, the president raised the payroll tax.
That's not rich people. That's people making under $113,000 a year.
Why did he do that? Because there isn't enough money to pay for all these government programs just taxing rich people.
No, he did that because they had cut back on they had reduced the payroll tax over a short period of time in order to stimulate the economy, and that reduction expired.
That's right.
This has nothing to do with some nefarious program, and it wasn't actually raising taxes on working people.
The net effect was people had less money in their paycheck once that change was made. They could have continued at the lower rate, but they didn't.
So let me get this straight. Democrats conspired to screw old people because they figured the old people wouldn't figure it out. Now it's coming into effect. The law is coming into effect. There's going to be an election next year. There's going to be an election 2 years after that, 2 years after that, 2 years after that. Is this going to be the end of the Democratic Party?
Not at all. We don't know what's going to happen in the election. I don't know. I'm hoping that 2014 will be a referendum on the Obama health law, and people will go to the polls and vote for members of Congress who are committed to repealing this law because it's very damaging to health care, especially seniors' health care.
So, number one, Democrats did this because they figured old people wouldn't figure it out. And then number two, they did it because it was easier than raising taxes. Democrats have always wanted to raise taxes.
That's right, but it's tougher to do that. It's tougher to raise taxes.
Over what? Republican objections?
Slide the money from one group to another.
It's tougher to raise taxes over Republican objections, you mean?
It's tougher to raise taxes, period. There are always repercussions to raising taxes, but moving money from one program to another.
Franklin Roosevelt raised the income tax from 25% to 91%. He got reelected 3 times.
That's true. It was a very different environment.
Well, yeah, people, our economy had been crashed by a bunch of banksters, and we had levels of inequality that are identical to today.
I think what you really ought to look at is what the repercussions of taking this money out of future Medicare spending is.
Well, let's assume that they're just as absolutely horrible as you say, and that, terrible things are going to happen, and Granny's going to get pushed off that cliff, and it's not Paul Ryan who's doing it, it's President Obama. There will be no political survival for the Democratic Party if that happens, and I'm still trying to figure out. I'm trying to, you're a smart woman, Betsy. Why? Well, I can understand. I understand, for example, Billy Towson. We even had him on this program. He shepherded through Medicare Part D during the Bush administration. The Republicans were pushing this. Let's give pharmaceuticals to old people under Medicare. They didn't put it on the budget. We're not going to pay for it. We're just going to add it to the deficit. And we're not going to let Medicare negotiate the price of those pharmaceuticals the way that Walmart does or the way that the Army does. They have to pay full retail. And so this was a $600 billion gift to the pharmaceutical industry. I understand why Billy Towson did that. He went to the Speaker of the House and asked for special permission to leave the House of Representatives 4 months early so he could take a $2 million job as the CEO of Pharma, the lobbying company for the pharmaceutical industry. I get that. That's fairly obvious. There's a quid and there's a pro quo. Quid and a quo. What's the, what's in it for the Democrats to do this to people?
I'm not in it for the politics. I'm looking at the impact on health care.
I understand that, but why? If we could understand why they did this horrible thing, maybe we could do something about it. Why did Democrats do this?
It's a very good thing. Medicare Part D is a very good thing, and let me explain why. Because if you have health insurance and you don't have coverage for drugs, in this day and age, you really don't have health insurance.
I agree with you. I agree with you, but do you think it's a good thing that the government not be allowed to negotiate pharmaceutical prices?
That's not the issue.
Okay, but that was my point. Is I can find a motivation for these things. Medicare Part D was a good thing. The Republicans thought they'd get some benefit from it. They did, presumably. I mean, they won an election after that. George Bush bragged about it. God bless them. They did what the people want. Why would the Democrats do something so villainous?
As I explained, the villainous aspect of what they're doing is trying to shift money out of one program to another.
Right, but why?
Ignoring the impact on seniors.
But why?
They have simply ignored the terrible impact on seniors. And rather than arguing with you about the politics, I'd like to explain to your listeners what we know about that impact, because Richard Foster, the chief actuary of Medicare, he worked for the
Betsy, your website. I'm sorry to interrupt you. We have hard breaks. I have no control over the break. I'm not trying to cut you off, but let me tell our viewers and our listeners, there's a ton of this information on Betsy's website. You can read it. Her last name McCoy is spelled McCaughey. It's BetsyMcCoy.com. Betsy, Dr. Betsy McCoy, thank you for dropping by.